one looks at the land behind me, one can never think for a minute that it can be habitable. But come to think of it, the land that is behind me is part of a big phase that is going to be used for both residential and commercial stands. Hello, I'm PJ Nagole and this is Industry Watch. This week we have taken you into the real estate sector and we give you an insight into how stands come to be. Stay with us. I'm now joined by Takunda Mukuru, who is the Chief Operations Officer at MCM Estates, to take us through how that entire process comes to be until you are residing here. Takunda, thank you so much for joining me. Now, when I opened the show, I was on that side of the land, in what some might call a bundu. But you have plans to actually make sure that these are turned into stands.
Correct.
Take me through that process. How does one wake up, identify a jungle, a bundu, and say, I want people to live here?
Okay, thanks for having us on your show, by the way. Brilliant thing you're doing to educate the people in Zimbabwe. And it is things that they need to know that I'm about to walk you through now. Yeah. So initially, when you identify a piece of land, there are lots of things that you will consider. The proximity to where the land is to everything else that a residential stand would need to have. Okay. How close is it to the shops, to the road networks, to water networks, to electricity lines and all of that. But essentially, when you identify a piece of land, the first thing that you've got to do is have a registered surveyor come in and do what they call the topographical survey. And what this is essentially these professional guys that get paid lots of money to come in, they do, to survey the entire piece of land. And this is how, when you see a layout, which the engineer will probably walk you through a little bit later on, this is how you see this area has rocks, this area has water and everything. Every time you come across a developer who has not done that, this is where you end up finding people and funny things like that, because you have to understand the terrain on which you presume to put these stands. After all of that is done, you have a profile of the entire piece of land itself. And then after that, you're going to start developing your layout designs. Okay. And those would then be approved by the Department of Spatial Planning, one of the government departments that will do that. And then after that, this is where we start relating to the title deeds, the one that you eventually get that will point out and say, in this development, you have this piece of land, this is how it is identified, this is the number, this is how big it is and all of that. And that is achieved through what is called a titled survey. Okay. The surveyor comes back in again and then he does that, and then that is also then submitted to the relevant authorities in the government. And then once that approval is done, you then get the engineering guys, those nerds as they like to call them.
The educated guys.
Exactly, exactly. So those guys then come in and do the actual practical side of the development. This is where the roads are going to be. This is where the water lines are going to be. This is where the sewerage is going to be. And all of that is to make sure that whatever that you have decided to do with the layouts, taking into consideration the setup of the land itself, as I described from your topographical survey, yes. The engineers then come and do those drawings and everything. That again needs to be approved by the relevant authorities in the government offices. And then finally comes your guys from the Environmental Management Agency, excuse me, what we commonly call EMA, yeah. And they will give you an EMA certificate. So this is essentially to say your development is not going to harm the environment. How are you going to achieve that? How are you going to manage the trees in your development? How are you going to manage the water? Where is it coming from? And unless those guys give you a go-ahead, you can't start digging a single shovel into the ground until you get that EMA certificate. And then from there, you're good to go. You get to work, you start to doing all of your servicing, your roads come in, your sewerage lines come in, your stormwater drainage comes in. Eventually, when all of that is done, people will then come in. And then the only time they can start to be able to build their houses is when you get from the council that you're working with what is called a partial compliance. Okay. And what that means is you've done enough work on your development to show that you have the intention for people to live here. So then people who have bought into your development can start building, but it is not habitable yet. Okay. So after you do all of that, you then get what's called a full compliance certificate. This is them to say, okay, you've done all of the servicing that you can, people can then come in and live there. They have everything they need.
Let's talk about that, partial compliance and full compliance. Behind us is a stretch of road. There are pegs everywhere. It doesn't look like people can start building. Maybe before we get that, how big is this particular site? The one we're standing on.
This particular site is about 110 hectares in total.
110 hectares.
Correct.
But as of now, there's no one who can start putting a foundation down. How long does it take for you to get the partial compliance and for someone to start putting bricks into the ground?
Okay, so currently for this specific development, we're looking at getting our first partial compliance in about a week or two. Talk about timing for you to come in.
Yes.
And then generally, it is a function of two things. It's a function of how much work you're putting into the ground.
Okay.
You could do it depending on how much effort you're putting into the ground, maybe over 3-4 months. And then if you are budget constrained or whatever the case may be, it may be a little bit longer. But the council does reserve the right to actually take it away from you if you take too long.
Okay.
So it's not they give you the partial compliance, then it's happy days. They give it to you because you're simply demonstrating an intention. And they are trusting you with your intentions to deliver. You can't take forever to deliver. They can always revoke it.
Now, they are, when I toured the site earlier on, they say these are called pegs. And they demonstrate how big is your site, 4x4, and everything that has to do with one stand. But there are also pipes, there's also road that is being constructed. Talk to me about the pegging. How does that particular process go about?
So the pegging is done when you're looking at your title surveys with those surveyors that I mentioned earlier on.
Yes.
After getting the profile of the land itself, after drawing the site plans and getting the layouts approved and everything, they then actually go stand by stand using your geographical satellites and everything to pinpoint the location to an accuracy of about 10-15 centimeters where your first peg is. When you have 4 of them, it then forms the little box that your stand sits in. That's exactly how it's done. And then this is also bearing in mind that when this pegging is being done, it is taking into account the engineering drawings that you would have spoken about earlier, that you will hear about more from our resident engineer. This will then take into account, this is where the sewer lines are going to go. So you can't have a stand pegged where a sewer line is going to go, for example. Unless it is then done underground and eventually a stand can be put on top of that, which is more complicated. But then when you have your water lines, it all depends on how the designs are done. But all of that, it's like a constant tango going on. Everything has to be well coordinated to be able to deliver to the final customer.
Taku, you've taken me through quite a number of steps that the developer needs to do before they can start selling the stands. So is that all that is needed to be done until PJ comes to Taku and says, Taku, I'm interested in this particular piece of land. Can I buy it?
Okay, I think probably one key thing that has to stand out is that after you do your surveys and you do your layout designs, the Department of Special Planning grants you what is called a subdivision permit. And this is to say that after we get that permit, this is how you can then actually identify your stand through that pegging process. Without that, legally, we can't do anything. And if you come across any development that does not have that document, again, it's not going very far. And at the same time, much like the partial compliance as well, you're not given that permit forever. It lasts about a year, and then you have to keep moving forward. The good thing about how the government has set up this space is that when developers would presume to put a development up, they don't give you leeway to do whatever you want. You have to move very, very closely to all of the regulations, all of the requirements. You cannot cut corners or else the development just falls apart. Unfortunately, there are people who do try to do that. But anywhere you have a situation where good things happen, bad things happen as well. But that subdivision permit is something that is very, very key to answer your question directly. That's how it enables us to sell and for you to be able to literally identify where your stand is because of the pegs that would have been put there.
So it comes, the subdivision permit comes with conditions?
Yes, yes.
Now, what happens, we mostly see in Zimbabwe particularly, issues whereby people are given stands, they are sold stands that are not properly serviced. There is poor water reticulation, there is poor sewer system reticulation. What happens in those instances on the part of the developer, and how are people supposed to trust? How am I supposed to know as PJ when I walk into MCM Estates? I see the road, I see the pegging. What is supposed to convince me as a buyer to say, I think this piece of land will do?
I think one of the key things, especially given the context of our country, is transparency, something that we're big on specifically in MCM, because we have a history of people getting their fingers burnt in this space.
Yes.
So essentially, the developer needs to be responsible. Responsible enough to invite anyone in who would want to come and see, especially if they're a customer, where their dollars are in the ground. We're not the type of developer, and neither should any type of developer be, that as soon as they take PJ's money, first thing they're going to do is buy a Prado. You don't need a Prado to do your job on behalf of your customer. So the biggest thing for me is the transparency, and that's how you gain the trust from the customer. If you look at our model, for example, it makes it very easy. We are no deposit, no interest, simply $200 per month. Okay. So the moment you start paying, you can come and follow up every month when you're leaving $200. Guys, where are we? And then we take you to the site to show you videos, whatever. That transparency is what builds the trust for us. And it's a very trust-based relationship, because we are trusting you to do your part, okay, and we do our part every month as well. So it's in an environment where we have a bad history. I mean, to be fair, let's not sugarcoat it. We have a very terrible history in this space, but the onus is on the developer themselves to become trustworthy, to be a developer of their word, to deliver on what they promise in the time frame that they promise, to the dollar that they are given.
Perfect. All right. Let's go. Let's go. Perfect. So if you are looking to buy a stand, this week's episode is the best episode that you've ever watched here on NRTV. We have taken you into the real estate sector, just giving you bits and pieces of how everything comes to be about before you put your dollar into the ground. Stay with us. We're going to be joined by the site engineer in the next segment, just to take us through all the planning that Taku was talking about. Welcome back. You're still watching Industry Watch with me, PJ Nagoli. This week, we have taken you into the real estate sector, giving you an insight into how stands come to be. Earlier on, we're joined by Taku, who was taking us through that entire process. How does it start from idle land to being where we are now? But for the interesting part, we are now joined by engineer Tinashe Musuo to take us through what happens. Road pipe, Tinashe, thank you so much for joining me.
Welcome.
Now, I would like to find out, after the land has been bought and everything else has been done in terms of compliance and all, what then becomes the next steps? How are you guys guided as engineers to know just stand yakati, stand B, and all of those things?
Okay. After the land has been acquired, the first process that we will be doing is to do the locality map. After we've produced the locality map, we move on to the ground and do the pegging of stands and roads. After that, we conduct some soil tests in order for us to do the designs of the roads, the sewer and water.
Now, there's this plan and there's this plan. You say you do the locality map.
Yeah.
Let's start with that. What is a locality map? Because my audience, and myself included, but locality, I don't understand what you're talking about. So what is that all about, the locality map?
A locality map, inongoshowa where my stands pahari exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Like for example, in Marondera, we just prepare a map which shows the exact position in Marondera where our site is.
Okay.
So on this,
So I have a big gray up. This is Marondera.
yes, this is our site.
Okay.
Here marked in black.
Yeah.
Yeah. So on the locality map again, we subdivide the land into residential stands.
Okay.
After doing so, we submit it to the council, to the relevant council. Then it will approve our map. After it has been approved, we then go to the ground and do the pegging of the stands.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you peg the stands according to this locality map?
Yes, everything is done according to this paper.
And then on this paper, there are a lot of things.
Yeah.
There are yellow sections, there are purple, I don't know if that's purple, green sections, brown sections. Just break that down for me.
Okay. As it is shown on our map, here on the brown sections, it's typically indicating where our roads are.
Okay.
Then on the yellow sections, these are stands. As you can see, these are numbered stands. Then on the green ones, these are recreational park. On the reds, we have got schools, we have got churches, and other facilities.
So the map will actually show a person's stand number?
Yes, and its dimensions.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when one now comes to build, I know okay, using this map or they build according to another plan?
Okay. This map typically guides us in doing or in constructing the services.
Okay.
Because it is the map of the whole land.
Okay.
So when it comes to building your land, you need a site plan,
Okay.
which is acquired from the Surveyor General. Yeah.
Now, you brought me three rather plans.
Yeah.
You've explained that this is the locality map, which gives us an overview of the entire site.
Yes.
There's also this one. And when I was speaking to you earlier on, you off camera, you said to me, this is the plan that is the most important plan.
Yeah.
Why is this the most important plan and what is it all about?
Okay. These are the most important plan because they provide services. So before people build their houses, they are not required to build their houses when these services are not available. So the first thing is to service the land. That is, you construct the sewer lines, the water reticulation, as well as the road with stormwater drainage.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what then happens in instances whereby you see that there are stands that are sold without any service, there is no road, there is no sewer system?
Okay, that one will become a challenge to the residents. It's not easy to stay where there's no road, where there is road, there must be drainage.
Okay.
That's why you see some areas or some residential areas are flooding.
Okay.
So it will become a problem to the residents. Maybe when using their vehicles, there are a lot of mud, and in the rain season, the area is over flooded, and it will become a challenge again when it comes to our health problems. When there is no sewer system, when there is no water reticulation, people will suffer.
I'm seeing here, engineer, that there is a water reservoir here,
Yeah.
which is pegged 1,900 square meters. And then are these 10 numbers 1912, 1913, 1914, 1915? Are these 10 numbers?
Yes, they are stand up.
So-
Okay, on the issue of services again, as you can see here, we have put a water reservoir here. Like in phase 1 and 2, we are going to have about 7 boreholes, which are going to pump water to the reservoir.
Okay.
Then from the reservoir to the residential houses. Yeah,
So
that's the plan.
explain to me, how then do you know that, let's say, which stand can we take? 1839, stand number 1839.
Yes.
How do you know when to put and how to put the sewer reticulation system here, how to put the road according to this map. How do you use it to implement what is written here?
Okay, here on ground, the first thing is to you design first. After doing a cost-benefit analysis.
What is that all about?
It's about doing when doing these services, all right, we'll be trying to make it cost effective.
Okay.
Yes, as well as reliability to the residents. As well, when designing these systems, there are many factors which are involved there.
Okay.
Yeah, in terms of accessibility, we will put it where it is easily accessible to the residents.
Now,
as well as in terms of maintenance, it is also included.
Now, you mentioned earlier on the issue of soil tests.
Yeah.
For this particular site, how does the outcome of that particular soil test affect what you're going to do here?
Okay, let me start by saying the soil test, right, will as the most important thing, because it will determine the type of road that we are going to put on that area, based on the nature of the soil. So what we mostly need here is to test the bearing capacity when it comes to
bearing capacity.
Yes. When it comes to roads.
And you've put out another map.
Yeah.
So we've touched on the locality map.
Yeah.
We've touched on this one, which deals with the sewer reticulation system.
Yes.
What does this one do?
This one, it shows the road network.
Okay.
And stormwater drainage.
What is the stormwater drainage?
These are the drains put on the sides of the roads.
Okay.
They hold water so that our roads will not be damaged. So their main purpose is to protect the road from excessive water.
Engineer Musu, you've taken me through how these plans are made, and the analysis that you guys must do to ensure that everything is safely done.
Yeah.
But what is the timeline? How long does it take? Say, we've done the sewer reticulation system plan, we've done the locality plan, we've done the road plan. How long does it take now for someone to come from having all of this to seeing the Pani Road?
The most important factor that we must include when doing this is the availability of resources.
Okay.
Once there are engineers on ground, there are surveyors on ground, it won't take even 2 months to produce these drawings.
Okay.
So everyone will be on his job, like the structural engineer, the civil engineer, the surveyor. Everyone will be on his job. So it won't take much when the resources are available and the professionals are available.
It doesn't take much if the resources and the professionals are available. That was Engineer Tinashe Msuo just taking us through how everything is done. You acquire your land, you service your land, but you need to put the sewer reticulation system, you need to put the roads, you need to make sure that everything is okay and everything is safe for people when they want to stay there. That was Engineer Tinashe Msuo. We're going to take a quick break, but please do stay with us. Welcome back. You're still watching Industry Watch with me, PJ Nagoli. This week, an interesting episode indeed as we take you into the real estate sector. And to take me through this, to take me through the lesson of how one cannot avoid being duped in the nation of Zimbabwe, I am joined by Anthony McMullen. Anthony, thank you so much for joining me. But before we get into that, you have an interesting name. Everyone who knows you as Baba Maji. So let's use that one. Baba Maji, take me through the entire process. Zimbabwe has been unfortunate enough in this particular sector that people are always crying foul when it comes to stands. How does one know and how does one make sure that what I'm buying to is legit?
First of all, I'd have to tell you that when I got to Zimbabwe first, it was just less than 4 years ago. And it was a minefield to navigate them challenges myself, especially not coming from here or having visited before. I was lucky enough to marry a Soko Maruwa and have Majita, now be called Baba Majita. And my beautiful wife is an amazing lawyer with Maruwa Machanzi. So she helped me navigate the process, or as they say in Zimbabwe, and the process, what I would say to anybody, due diligence, make informed decisions. I notice in Zimbabweans when I talk to them a lot, the suspicion is there based on the past, negative connotations based on previous experiences or people they may know who had their fingers burnt. The reality is, don't base decisions on how you feel. Make decisions based on the information. And the information with land is very simple. Is there good title deeds? Always ask yourself that. There's a title deed office in the town. You can pay somebody to go in and check who's a professional to make sure them title deeds exist, they're not duplicated, or indeed they haven't got encumbrances. And this is something that people don't ask themselves with title deeds. Encumbrances means mortgages, caveats, chattels, where they've borrowed money against the title deeds. In some instances, people can borrow money from 2, 3 different institutions. And now you're purchasing something not realising that these title deeds may be legitimate, but they are heavily mortgaged. And now you are second behind the banks and the institutions that are on these title deeds. So check your title deeds, that's number one. The second thing I would say to people is check the subdivision permit. Make sure it's active. Now this is something that is missing a lot. People say, we have our subdivision permit, but have you checked it? The conditions on subdivision permits are various from subdivision permit, size of projects, etc. What I would say to you is this. In my experience, we had 1 year to do the pegging, the physical pegging. So your title, your subdivision permit, what it is it's the layout. You've done your topographical survey. Now some people, would-be developers, they avoid doing the topographical survey because it's expensive. Okay. This takes into consideration the contours, the slopes, the rocks, the water. Zimbabwe is the land of Matombo, stones. I am learning, Shauna, Didi Kufunda, but it is the land of stones. We have our blaster working here today, he's blasting. Because as soon as you go into the trenches for the water or for the sewage or for the storm drains, even when you remove the amount of soil you're supposed to move when you do roads, you come across stones. Now you can avoid some of them, especially the ones on the surface, if you've done a proper survey. So now you do a layout where in which you avoid the stones as best you can. And obviously you should avoid the water. As I said, some people are cutting corners left, right and centre, and they could be trying to obtain documentation where in which the work wasn't done. So now you find yourself at the end of the day with a stand that's on the side of a mountain, it's in the water, or indeed it's been duplicated twice and missold to somebody. And in some instances the developer doesn't even realise they're doing this, because as you can see with the land, it's very difficult for you to see where a small stream would be within land like this that's undeveloped. It's very difficult to see where the rocks are hiding. But if you do a comprehensive topographical survey, this survey will be able to tell you where in which they are, therefore you avoid them with the layout. Then you get your subdivision permit and you make sure it's active when indeed the pegging, the physical pegging has been done. And under Zimbabwean law, you shouldn't sell a stand unless the person can go and literally see and identify their stand based on the pegs. And these physical pegs are done within 1 square inch GPS wise. GPS meaning it's all the technology these days. They're able to actually show you where your peg is within 1 inch. So you know when you go to your land, this is my land. If these things aren't happening when you ask a developer, can I see my stand? Can I identify my stand? Where's the subdivision permit? Can I go to the local council? Has my stand got its own number in the local council? If I go in, do I have to ask for a specific person, or can I just go in and ask for anybody?
Okay.
There's usually a lot of signs when you ask these simple questions, and you can then start to weave out what's legitimate, what's not. And that's before they've done any work. When you take the work into consideration, as you can see by the roads we have, you can literally see we've gone down 400 mils here. And you can see the width of the roads. You can see it because you can see the old soil and then you can see the new soil that we've compacted. A lot of people in Zimbabwe are fooled based on what they feel, what they hear off of somebody. They see a yellow machine working, they're scraping the surface, they run to pay big deposits. They put tar on top of these roads, they don't have storm drains, they don't have the proper compaction, and then the roads start to wash away in 3 to 5 years due to the rains and due to the fact the roads weren't implemented in the proper way with the proper compaction and drainage.
Mamazu, you talk a good game, but a lot of people that I've come through personally always give you the story of how they met a good developer that could talk a big game just as you are talking to me right now. How then do I know that I'm coming to Bamaji, Anthony Macmillan, who sells me a pipe dream, but 3, 4 years down the line, 5 years down the line, my house is like a fish swimming in a sea?
Okay, so you use the word pipe dream. I'm not sure if the cameras can pick up the physical pipes here, and these are water pipes, and they've been implemented. So you can tell when the development is there because you're opening your eyes and you're able to see it. If I was talking a good game, it would be at the start when I tell you my paperwork is in order. You can check the title deeds office. You can check the subdivision permit. You can make sure it's active. You can go to the council. At that stage, if you've managed to do that, you've stopped 50% of the nonsense. The other 50% is now the physical work. It's simple. When I'm talking, I'm telling you and showing you the roads. I'm showing you the width of the roads. I'm showing you how deep we've gone down with the compaction process. You can see it. So now you don't have to believe what I say. You can believe it with your eyes. Okay. Because at this stage we've gone down that depth. We've done all the blasting, we've done the compaction, we've put in the storm drains. You can physically see the culverts that have gone into the ground, and you can physically see the pipes that have gone into the ground for the water. So yes, 50% is talk at the start, but you'd be surprised how many developments are illegitimate from the very start.
Okay.
You'd be surprised, there's so many. And they get to the stage where they start developing, but if you had have done simple due diligence, went to a solicitor, went to the council, went to the title deeds office, you could have cut out 50% of the nonsense before you started. But then, my advice would be, come to a developer who's developing. Get a civil engineer, pay them a small fee to come out and check the roads. Will these roads last? But in my words, what I would say, it's our model that protects that. You don't pay a deposit. You pay me $200. That's including interest, and you pay me over 10 years. No deposit. That includes the agreement of sale from the law firm, which in accordance to the tariff in the Law Society is $500 USD. You pay $200 and you can go and you can physically identify your stand. You can see the water pipes, you can see the roads. We've spent a lot more money than $200. So believe me, it's not that hard to believe me. Open your eyes, open your ears, look, pay $200, and you know when you come here I've spent more money than you.
Let's talk about the pricing model that you speak of. When you speak about your pricing model, you make it seem as if this is a very cheap deal and one can just get away with it. But one looks at the developer and thinks, they're going different. There's no way that someone can just come to me and sell me a dream at their loss. How does that pricing model for developers come to be about?
Okay, so firstly, I believe we were the first in Zimbabwe to do this, and I'm very proud of it. But it's very straightforward. You use the word cheap, it's not cheap. $200 a month over 10 years is 24k. 24k is not a small amount of money. We sell in gated communities, 300 square meter stands. We service them. Beautiful entrance, nice big wide open roads. We make a lot of money over 10 years, but we must do our job. And this gives you the protection again. If the road starts to wash away in 3 years, are you going to continue paying me? No, you're not. So once again, the only way I actually get my profit is by actually doing the job and making it last for the full 10 years that you pay me and longer.
Let's talk about that. You've touched on the pricing model and you speak about the roads and everything that is involved. How does one make sure that, as PJ, I want to buy a stand, how do I make sure that I get my return on investment should anything happen on the part of the developer?
Okay, I said it twice. I've spent more money than you. For me to get my profit, I have to build something that will last. I didn't come here, invest money, work really hard, building all these roads, putting these pipes in, for you to have the advantage at the start, for me not to get the advantage at the end. Otherwise, I would be very silly. But when you talk about investment, as much as I say it's 24k over 10 years, when you've built your house, you're now renting it to students in the university. And you can then pay the balance of the remaining years with the actual rent that you're collecting, not with the physical cash from your pocket up front. Because a lot of developers in Zimbabwe, they're asking for big deposits. They're scraping the surface, putting tar on the road, getting their money over 1 year, they're leaving, and now, when the road starts to wash away, they're gone, because they're paid. I want to make profit like every other businessman, and the only way I can do it is by doing my job, because I've spent more money than you at the start.
Now, finally, let's close with this, Anthony. What do you think needs to be done, particularly in Zimbabwe, so that people build confidence again in this particular sector? Taku has mentioned about the history of real estate in Zimbabwe, and it's a bad history. What do you think we need to do? Number one, what do you think developers need to do and the buyers need to do so that this sector is a sector that is hovered over by trust again?
So number one and number two is the exact same thing. And that's where the model came from. Make it affordable. Because the buyers are struggling to find big deposits with the average industry wage. So make it affordable, and then you have a market, and then you can scale it, and you can do it thousands of times. At MCM we have 4,000 stands in different developments. We were able to scale it because we've made it affordable and we're able to sell. It's that straightforward. So the buyers need to be able to afford it, and the developers need to be able to invest to be able to sell it at affordable rates over a longer period of time. We need to have confidence in each other. We need to do what we say what we do, and grow together.
Bamamshi, thank you so much for joining us on Industry Watch this week. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Transparency, transparency, transparency is the key to make sure that you do not get duped. Indeed, we've learned a lot of words: subdivision payment, topographical figures, locality map, everything to just educate you into how best you can make a decision that will benefit you and your family. I am PJ Nagoli, and this has been Industry Watch. See you next week.